Hi, everybody. Steve Albrecht, safelibrary.com and library20.com with Layla today, the Beagle, the Wonder Beagle, talking about what's called acceptable use policy for your social media and your intranet usage. So if you're a library leader, library director, or supervisor manager, this is something to think about. If you're an employee as well, know that the intranet, whether it's Slack or some of the other messaging programs that you use that are internal to the library, are also subject to subpoena. They're subject to subpoena in terms of Freedom of Information Act and Fair Records Request Acts by attorneys and people like that. So unfortunately, we see a lot of people using Slack and intranet sites, the communication tools for gossip and being mean to each other and talking about other folks, including patrons and employees. That stuff's subject to review by management. And the acceptable use policy says that it's our equipment, our lines, our keyboards, and so that you can't put up whatever you want on there. And so it doesn't mean you have to be a robot at work, but be cognizant of the fact whether it's political or gender-based or gossip or saying something about patrons or supervisors, managers, or other employees, that stuff like that could come back to bite you. So the acceptable use policy for your organization is something you have to look at, probably in consultation with your attorney. We talk about what fair use is, whether we own the equipment, which we do, and that it's subject to review by management, and even discipline up to including termination for things like hate speech and harassment and things like that. So we think about how these devices are so common and our exchanging of information throughout the day is so common that sometimes we don't think about the consequences. So look at the acceptable use policy, or what many organizations call the AUP, see whether you need some careful review of it and some reminders, especially for new employees as part of the onboarding process, and maybe a staff meeting about this conversation. As the election comes closer, we think about the speech that sometimes people want to say to each other about their political beliefs and who they like and don't like, whether that extends out to the library itself can be a concern in terms of the reputation of the organization and the fact that this stuff can come back later on in terms of possible litigation. So think about your acceptable use policy for Slack and the other internal intranet sites that you use. For Steve Albrecht, for Layla, the Wonder Beagle, see you next time.